Rich Rising. It's a pleasure to be here today. So, we're talking about math. And I don't mean in the practical sense like I'm not sitting here doing equations for you or anything crazy. Although it would be pretty interesting to note that math is a product of the early astrologers tracking the planets. Without astrology, we would not have math. So that being said, that's not my point today. I was listening to Terrence Howard. Finally, I listened to the whole interview with Joe Rogan from a few months ago. And boiling everything he said in 3 hours down to a tiny little equation. His whole hypothesis is 1 times 1 equals 2. Which essentially does turn the universe on its head. It changes the way we can calculate light, travel, sound, frequency, everything. And then interestingly enough, we have a very similar but not the same type of equation when we're talking about synergy. That's 1 plus 1 equals 3. And that's basically the math of how people benefit each other. You create a third energy and or a child together when two persons come into synergy. So, my brain thinks in very abstract ways. Sometimes it's like herding a bag of cats because of the ADHD and the autism. But we work with it, and just so bear with me. I was also thinking about how easy it is to get addicted to singlehood, because I'm there. I love spending a lot of time alone. It's intoxicating. I like my own presence. I like being alone with my own thoughts. I'll always love that. Now that I know what that tastes like, I'll always have a cave where I disappear to. Even when I get with a man, I'm even verging on the idea of keeping a separate bedroom. So we can visit each other, but nobody has to worry about their different sleep cycles and sharing blankets and whatever unless we want to. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's very important to maintain individuality in relationships. That being said, my concept is it's a lot easier to follow your spiritual practice, your physical goals, working out regularly every day, when you don't have other people to consider. Sometimes my day off away from work at the gym is, or cleaning, is packed back to back from when I wake up. I gotta get ready to go, leave the house, do groceries. It sometimes takes 2 or 3 different store trips to get everything I need. Get home, I get to put the groceries away. Then there's dishes that need to be done, so I jump to that. And then the trash needs to be done, so I do that. And then there's cleaning. More cleaning otherwise. Laundry usually happens on a laundry day. So I wind up being back to back busy, caretaking, doing shit, when I have scheduled days off. Busy. It's a lot easier to follow your own rituals, your own routines that you have designed for yourself when you don't have other people around. That's why I'm thinking about these math equations. 1 times 1 equals 2 could change the way we interact with and have relationship with the other. If it has that much change on physics itself, then we would then experience a different philosophical set that comes along with it. Math is a delineation of consciousness of life itself. Everything has a frequency that can be turned into colors and sound. It's all related. That's why we have synesthesia. That's why people like me see songs in color form, and sometimes they have smells. Because these things are interwoven, and some people have different ways of perceiving than others. 'Tis what it is. But being alone, you have singular experiences with source, with nature, and you get very locked in your head when you're around other people. But when you let somebody into your world in a certain way, then it becomes something else. And what I'm trying to say is that third thing that gets created, whether it's a child or it's what I think Crowley calls the third, it's like a spirit baby. You could be a actual like child or a spirit baby where you create a third energy together, and that becomes its own entity that you then protect. Spirit baby. It's not physical, but you can feel it and nurture it, you know? One plus one equals 3 in synergy. And it does make a lot of sense for the universe, you know. What Terrence Howard was saying was really compelling. Because we've all been taught, well, maybe not all, but if you've ever looked into Gnosticism, it would kind of agree with that hypothesis. The demiurge. Really, at least that's the way I heard it. My brain works different. It correlates things quickly, but it's very abstract. So I have some more ideas floating around in my head, but relationships to the other are so important in that we develop blind spots when we're by ourselves alone. This is a great example. Yesterday, I afforded myself a 90-minute massage from my homie Matt. He's my coworker. I don't trust a lot of people to touch me with clean energy, etc. But dudes are usually better at giving massages, in my opinion, at least for my body type. So I was very comfortable trusting him with that. But he asked me what I wanted worked on. I thought I would need pecs, neck, back, possibly hamstrings, piriformis, you know, shit I couldn't reach. But this dude, he started massaging my arms, and I've started feeling things in my shoulder and neck differently, and I realized it's not always what you think when you're feeling yourself by yourself. Sometimes it's something that's sort of relating to the area of pain, right? You get pain because there's a deficiency somewhere down the line. And you don't really feel it where the deficiency is because perhaps you've adapted past that and you're overcompensating here, right? Same thing in relationships. Same thing with being celibate for so long. Same thing with being isolated. It is a lot easier to stay on your path when there's no other energies to combine with your trajectory, your momentum. Just a line of thinking. Math is very interesting. When I got into adult math school a couple of years ago, I had to leave because I just didn't have the time for it anymore. And I've never spoken about this, but my teacher was starting to make weird comments via text. And I got uncomfortable, so I just left as quietly as I could. But I didn't quite feel done. I didn't feel satisfied. I have a high school diploma, so I didn't need to be there. I just wanted to be there, and that bothered a lot of the other students, but it became too social. The environment of the class was too social for me. I wanted to stick to the business of the class and leave. So I tried establishing boundaries, and when that didn't work, I had to leave. But when I was taking assessments, I discovered that my brain has no problems with understanding algebraic concepts. But I have problems with subtraction and sometimes addition, but mostly subtraction style math, like especially long division in general. Figuring out percentages and having decimals. I never felt like I was confident about that. So give and take, but I learned things about my brain, which was very good to know. Like, my understanding algebraic concepts is basically why I'm good at astrology, why I can look at a chart and write a whole synastry chart or a whole natal chart without having to look up a definition. What I'll do is I'll sit and I'll channel a chart, a natal chart, an astrology chart. I'll let it speak to me and I'll write down notes by hand when I'm doing my charts. And I'll just talk about what's popping out to me, and it looks messy at first, and then I'll do 3 or 4 different drafts. It takes me a really long time. But then right before I start compiling these things into the final version, I then will occasionally, depending to make sure I have it accurately on 1 or 2 points, if I didn't feel confident on that, I will test myself and then go to YouTube or go to Google and look up something specifically and make sure I'm not giving the wrong impression or advice. And my instincts are correct, but that's my algebraic mind. And then it's just interesting because I think about the prophet Daniel in the Bible too, because he was, at the time, if you read the scriptures, he was a slave that was purchased from the Levant and brought to Babylon. Him and his buddies were being very other. They were doing, fasting for days at a time, staying away from certain foods, having their own rituals that they partook in differently from everybody else. But Daniel especially was noted to be one of the best astrologers Babylon had. I made a podcast about this, Spirituality with Muscle. The episode is called, Am I Going to Hell for This? Or I'm Going to Hell for This. It was in response to one of my cousins, who's a very ultra-Christian, telling me I was going to hell for being an astrologer and reading tarot. So if you get curious. Spirituality with Muscle on Spotify. That's my first and last name. I don't hide anything. So if you want to get more into the scripture and Babylon and Daniel. That's what that's about, that episode. I'm going to hell for this. But you see what I'm saying? Like, without math, without astrology, they wouldn't be what they are. And to be gifted in it has to be a blessing from God. It has to come from somewhere, some other source outside of you. You have to submit to that inner voice that is guiding you every step of the way when you're reading the stars. So hodgepodge thoughts about math. All this Gemini energy has me cooking. So, it's Thursday. I have some work later. I'm excited. A couple of spray tans. My busty roomie is back. So, having different style works. I love whatever I do. I love working. So, I'm extremely happy to be who I am and living my life. And I like my problems. They're pretty good for problems. They're not that bad. So I'm always sending you good love from a clean plate, clean slate, clean plate. I'm hungry. Clean plate. And I'm gonna get my silly ass offline for now. So, I love you guys. Hopefully, y'all could have followed that whole ramble, because it's a different side of my brain than I normally show. I love you guys. Bye for now.